Happy Friday and welcome back to CBC News BC. I am Jessica Chung here in the Vancouver newsroom. Okay, let's get you caught up on your top stories. Now, Premier David Eby has walked back a key portion of the NDP's tariff response bill, and this comes after it received backlash from some who say it would give the government sweeping powers to regulate challenges anticipated from possible tariffs.
There are anxieties that we didn't get the balance right, that I didn't get the balance right in terms of the ability to move quickly and necessary safeguards. My commitment from the beginning for British Columbians was that we needed to work together on these things with business, with labor, with industry, with First Nations to respond to the tariff threat. So with that in mind, we'll be pulling Part 4 of Bill 7 to ensure that we get the balance right.
And now that part that Eby just mentioned is what would have given Cabinet the power to bypass the legislature and implement regulations responding to tariffs. Now, Eby has now scrapped that. Now, the other parts of the bill include breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and giving BC the ability to toll trucks that drive through the province to Alaska. And BC's provincial health officer has officially declared an end to the respiratory illness season. Dr. Bonnie Henry says there has been a decrease in influenza, COVID-19, and RSV in recent weeks.
We had the worst influenza season that we've had since before the pandemic. It was primarily a influenza A, H1N1. About 65% of the tests were positive for H1N1, and about 35% were H3N2. So we had both influenza A viruses circulating, and I think that's why we had that double peak.
And she says this means additional measures put in at healthcare settings are no longer required, like the use of personal protective equipment. But she's still urging people to stay home if they're sick, wash their hands, and wear a mask when it's appropriate. And Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump wrapped up a phone call this morning. Now, it was the first conversation between the two as leaders, and Trump has already taken to Truth Social. He called it an extremely productive call, saying the two agree on many things and will be meeting after the federal election to discuss politics and business. Now, this is a different tone than what the U.S. president has taken on before, and one political science professor says the language he used in his post was respectful.
You referred to him as Prime Minister Carney, not Governor Trudeau, as we had before. So evidently this call seems to have gone well in the first instance, but President Trump is so mercurial that this afternoon he may have other posts. We're just going to have to see how it unfolds.
Now, this phone conversation came about after Trump said he would go ahead with vehicle tariffs on April 2nd, a move that would cripple Canada's auto sector. And Carney said that if Trump does go ahead with the levies, he promises to retaliate. And now to the federal election. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is on Vancouver Island today. It's his second day in BC, and he held a news conference this morning in Nanaimo, announcing that if he is elected, he will impose life sentences for some human traffickers, gun smugglers, and fentanyl kingpins. And Green Party leaders Jonathan Pedno and Elizabeth May are also set to be in Nanaimo tonight. And that's it for me. I am Jessica Chung. You are watching CBC News BC. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here because BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. The much anticipated first phone call between Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump took place earlier this morning. So, what would that mean for Canadian-U.S. relations going forward, and how could it impact the election campaigns? I want to hear from you. And get your gardening questions in. Everyone's favorite gardening expert, Brian Minter, will join us in our second half. I'm Amy Bell in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. Thanks for joining us here on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. What's your reaction to the call between Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Donald Trump? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690, and always email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. And it is only the first week of the federal election, but it's already been pretty action-packed. Our legislative reporter, Katie DeRosa, joins us for a look at the week that was and what impact we've seen here in BC. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Amy. Nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you with her. Just quick off the top, as we heard in the headlines, EB speaking, Prime Minister or Premier EB speaking earlier today about the changes to Bill 7. What can we look for there?
Well, David Eby said he acknowledges that there was criticism that the bill was overly broad. The bill did three things. It aims to remove interprovincial trade barriers. It allows the government to levy fees on trucks that drive through BC en route to Alaska. But the section of the bill that really caused controversy was this broad area that said the government, by cabinet order, instead of going to the legislature, could basically do anything in response to foreign governments and anything to shore up BC's economy. So that is really such a broad area, and critics were calling that a blank check. Okay. So EB says that section of the bill will be removed, so the bill will go forward without that. And he took the blame. He says, I did not strike the right balance, and we responded to critics, and we're changing that.
Okay. And Pierre Poilievre has also been here in BC this week. What's his message been for voters across the province?
Yeah, so Pierre Poilievre was in Nanaimo today. Main focus was public safety. We know public safety in Nanaimo has been an issue. And he, said that he would be, tough on, what he called monsters, basically, people who commit crimes repeatedly. And he said that people would face life sentences, anyone who's convicted of 5 or more counts of human trafficking, those who import or export 10 or more illegal firearms, as well as fentanyl trafficking, saying fentanyl has killed so many people that you're essentially a murderer if you're trafficking in fentanyl. But one area that Poilievre really took aim at Gregor Robertson, former Vancouver mayor, who's a high-profile candidate for the Liberals. He spent several minutes focusing on Robertson. He called him the most radical pro-drug politician in Canadian history. He accused Robertson of pushing drug policies like safe injection sites, which he said have actually increased the number of overdoses. Now, we haven't been able to get Robertson to respond yet, but certainly it's interesting that Poilievre really focused his attacks on Robertson today on the campaign trail.
Yeah, it was it was very pointed, and it was surprising to see, at least for me, that level of attack in a sense. And there's been quite a few surprises in BC this week, not just with Gregor Robertson. There's been a few other surprises for those that are running or perhaps not running. Let's walk through those.
Yeah, so, it was really interesting. We know that, for example, Mike DeYoung was passed over by the federal Conservatives, for the Abbotsford South Langley riding. That hasn't deterred him. He's throwing in his hat as an independent. He told CBC yesterday he knows it's an uphill battle for independents, but he believes that his reputation could set him apart. He was an MLA for 30 years, one of the province's longest serving MLAs. And even some voters that we spoke to in the Langley area said that they might consider voting independent because they respect Mike DeYoung. Now, he is he's up against Sukhman Singh Gill, who's a 25-year-old farmer from Langley. So, more of a political novice. But there's concerns that a right-leaning independent candidate could split the right vote in a blue riding. So that's an interesting dynamic there. On the Liberal camp, another high-profile former BC Liberal politician, Christy Clark, former premier, was passed over by the Liberals. She was looking at the South Surrey White Rock riding, but the party went with Ernie Clausen, who's a well-known White Rock councillor. Christy Clark didn't give a reason of what she was told in terms of why they didn't go with her. She is a divisive politician. She would be more of a blue Liberal, I suppose. So perhaps in a camp that includes Gregor Robertson, who's more left-leaning, maybe that wouldn't have worked. So we don't really know the war room decisions, but certainly some high-profile provincial politicians who couldn't make the jump into the federal scene.
Okay. And as I mentioned off the top, of course, big story today, Prime Minister Mark Carney had that long-awaited phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump. How might this, I suppose, alter the campaigns going forward, just in terms of their maybe messaging?
Well, I mean, again, we know that the issue of this campaign is the tariffs.
Yeah.
And, Carney this week took a back seat. He had to suspend his campaign to put on his prime minister hat, and he took the call from Trump. And interesting, reports were saying that Trump was the one who reached out for the call because Carney had said he will talk to Trump when Trump is ready to respect Canada's sovereignty. So he played a little bit of hardball there, and it seems to have worked. Trump was very respectful.
Yeah.
It sounds like in a post on Truth Social, he called Carney prime minister.
Yes.
We know that he
And not
he called
governor.
Trudeau governor. Exactly. So perhaps a little bit of that hardball earned him some cred. We know, again, Doug Ford got a little bit of credibility for talking tough. So maybe this is the kind of, deal making that Trump responds to. But Eby was asked about the call today, and he says he still remains skeptical. He said Trump changes his mind on a dime, and so he's not, waving the victory flag just yet.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with such a mercurial leader, that is a valid point of view that many have taken towards Trump. Yeah, only week one, Katie. I suppose we'll see what next week brings.
Yeah, and it's again, I think we'll have to see where the leaders go next. We when Carney and Singh come in BC, which will be a big battleground for all the parties. But of
Right.
course, the NDP is struggling in the polls, and BC is a huge area for the NDP. Half of its seats federally are here. So I think we'll be looking at BC in terms of how the NDP do.
Okay. Katie, thanks so much for taking time with us today.
Thanks, Amy.
That is CBC legislative reporter Katie DeRosa, and she joined us from Victoria. And as we have been hearing, yes, Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump had their very first phone call with each other this morning. Following the call, the Prime Minister's office sent out a readout that reads in part, the leaders agreed to begin comprehensive negotiations about a new economic and security relationship immediately following the election. Trump also spoke to reporters about the call this morning.
A very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd. Because, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking to reporters from the White House earlier. So how do you feel about the state of Canada-U.S. relations, and what do you want to come out of these negotiations? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email us, bctoday@cbc.ca, to react to that conversation between Donald Trump and Mark Carney and provide some insight. We've reached Max Cameron. He is a political scientist at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at UBC. Hi, Max. Thanks for coming on today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Never a dull moment.
That's right.
So
That's
just,
right.
sorry, what was that?
No, I mean, right, with every tweet and comment, there's so many twists and turns, it gives you whiplash.
It does indeed. Just how important do you think this call was between Mark Carney and Donald Trump today?
It seems to suggest a change in tone. Instead, he's not referring to Carney as the governor. He's not talking about the 51st state. So it is a little bit more positive. I think that benefits Carney to the extent that it suggests that his strategy is saying, I'll talk with Trump, but there has to be mutual respect. That you might say that appears to be working. Trump is a bully, and you have to be firm with bullies. So I think there's some benefit here for Carney. At the same time, I don't think we need to get ahead of ourselves, but this at least gives us a view of what might happen after the election, which is some kind of comprehensive negotiation between Canada and the United States, covering a range of issues that would probably span both commerce and security. And so, as a country, we've been grappling with what do we do if we can no longer count on the United States, if this relationship is broken?
Right.
Do we have to pursue a national policy? Do we have to diversify our trade? What are alternative strategies? This conversation and the messaging that we've heard around it suggests that part of what we might be looking at in the future is an effort to protect and preserve what exists in terms of that relationship, and that could include even deeper integration or integration along new dimensions. So I don't think we want to get ahead of ourselves. It's one tweet. It's a series of public statements by the two leaders, and it's very early to read much in the tea leaves, but it does point to the possibility of a different kind of tone in the conversation.
Right, and I suppose that is the significance of it only just being one phone call. It is sort of the first time in quite some time that we have seen that shift in the dynamic between Canada and the U.S. Where does that leave us with the tariffs, do you think, though, as we continue along towards our election on April 28th? How, I suppose in a way, how do the various parties move forward with perhaps this renewed attitude from the U.S., but also with those tariffs looming?
Presumably the tariffs are still coming in, so
Yeah, we've heard
April,
nothing otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. No reason to believe they will. Although, Trump has, backed off of some of his tariff threats in the past. So it could very well be that he backs off and postpones it further. That's definitely a possibility. Let's assume he goes forward with the tariffs. Canada, of course, this will again be an invitation to Carney to play this dual role that he's in of, on the one hand, campaigning for, on the other hand, serving as prime minister, and he'll need to indicate what Canada's response is. And I think Canada's response clearly has to be that we match the tariffs with retaliatory measures of comparable value. So again, I think this does, on the one hand, it suggests a shift, but on the other hand, we're still locked in this. We're still hearing the grievances, this crazy claim that somehow we're being subsidized to the tune of $200 billion a year by the United States, which is absolutely wrongheaded.
Yes.
We're still hearing the grievance, right? And so that's not going.
We will take a couple calls now from line one, Scott in Vancouver. Hi, Scott. How are you feeling about the call this morning?
Yeah, hi. I think we should definitely diversify. Build an east-west pipeline, find other markets.
Okay.
We don't want to be back in this position again. Even if things calm down, who knows who's after Trump? Could be worse. We need to definitely diversify.
All right, Scott, thank you. Thank you for that, Max. I could see you nodding along. And that is a call that we've been hearing, that we really need to diversify and not rely so heavily on the U.S. as a trading partner.
NAFTA made us vulnerable. NAFTA was supposed to protect us against all of this. It's made us more vulnerable. We do need to diversify. I think the relationship has been fundamentally broken, and repairing it, I think it's worth the effort to do everything possible to maintain the best possible relationship with the United States. But I think going forward, we have to learn the lesson of what has happened to this country over the last couple of months. And I would just add that it's not just building pipelines, right? I mean, Canada has to think about building a comprehensive, diversified economy. That means a national policy that that builds our own manufacturing, that diversifies our economy across a wide range of dimensions, not just relying on oil and gas and natural resources, as I think we've tended to do in the past.
Yeah. We'll take a call now from Sandy in Vancouver. Hi, Sandy. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, at first blush, it sounds positive, from what they're saying about the conversation and listening to Trump afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good thing. But there's an issue that I feel is forgotten in the debate, and that is China's tariffs on our canola farmers. I mean, 100% tariffs, and nobody's talking about it.
Okay.
And so it breeds Western alienation, which we want to try and stem. So I'd like somebody to ask the Prime Minister and the opposition leader, what are you going to do to support our farmers? Are you going to drop the tariff? Are you going to drop the EV tariff on China? Let's make some strides here. Let's not have it be, Ottawa and Eastern centric the whole time. Canola is a very important export for Canada. Nobody's talking about it.
Okay, Sandy, thank you for that. And Max, are we at risk of ignoring some very important issues as we focus so much on the U.S. tariffs, as we focus so much on certain industries?
Yeah, I think it's so critical for this country at this time to be united and strong, and that means that we have to be including everybody in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree. I think that we face a growing division in our country between rural and urban, and we've seen that certainly here in British Columbia. It is really important that we understand the contribution of our farmers and make sure that we are protecting them. That as we go forward, no sector, there's not the oil and gas sector, not the farmers, no manufacturing should be thrown under the bus. And I think that we've learned from the pandemic that everybody contributes, everyone benefits if we work together. That absolutely has to be the spirit of policy going forward.
All right. And Kristen in Parksville, how are you feeling about this morning's call between Canada and the U.S.?
I don't trust it for a minute.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
Because I don't think you go from a weasel to a statesman in the blink of an eye. There was no demeaning. There was no degrading. There was no insult. Trump actually sounded like a statesman, and call me a cynic, but I don't trust it for a second.
No, and Kristen, you are not alone in that. It is a incredible shift in Trump's attitude and words and demeanor, in that he's acting what we would expect from a politician, which is not the way he has acted up until this point. Is there that lack of trust that is really going to be an issue that sides need to overcome and that the parties need to be addressing?
I don't think that we can let our guard down. I can't imagine what Mark Carney could possibly have said to him. As much as I'm all for Mark Carney, I can't imagine what he would have said to him to elicit such a 180-degree turnaround, and I just don't trust it. I don't trust him as far as I could throw him, which I couldn't throw him at all. So
thank you for that, Kristen. Have a good day. And Randy wrote an email, actually, Max, that echoes that. It says, I trust our prime minister. I don't trust Trump's pronouncements, other than those relating to causing chaos and future hardships on the poor, weak, and vulnerable. So elbows up, true north, strong and free. And Max, as we've mentioned, I think with many topics that have come up, is we've seen this real uniting force because of Trump and all of these threats, really bringing a lot of people in Canada together. But there is that weariness and that innate distrust that Trump could possibly do any sort of turnaround.
Yeah, it's been extraordinary to see the wave of pride in country and indignation about how we've been treated. That's not going to go away anytime soon. I agree that that Trump cannot be trusted. I don't believe he has the character that deserves the trust of Canadians. And I think that, we're going to have to go into any future negotiations with our eyes absolutely wide open. We know that bullies, respond better to people who stand up to them than to people who cave. And we have seen people caving left, right, and center around Trump. I suspect what happened here was that Carney's envoys to Washington have said, if Mr. Trump calls Carney Governor Carney or refers to Canada as the 51st state, there will be a click on the line, and that will be the end of the conversation. And I suspect that that's the message that got through. The tone, the demands are going to still be the same. But I think there's a shift in tone that simply reflects the fact that Carney has said there can be conversations, but they have to be based on respect. And by the way, that's a low bar. And I think that was a really good message.
And is that something that we will perhaps then see the other leaders, maybe following suit, that they will take a stronger, harder line, to sort of keep up with Carney?
I suspect so. And, look at how the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has dealt with Trump. Look at how Starmer in the UK has dealt with Trump. I think that you can be very firm and very principled and strong on your country's national interests. That doesn't mean you have to engage in the mudslinging or be mean-spirited. You can flatter Trump. That's fine, but you don't give an inch to the bullying. And I think that that's the lesson that many countries are learning around the world in dealing with this administration.
All right. We do have a couple of other emails that have come in. Hugh writes, if Trump says he is looking forward to working with Carney, the logical conclusion is that he is lying again. So perhaps some reverse psychology there on Trump's behalf. And then we have an email from James. It says, well, for once I could listen to Trump and not get outraged. It seems like Carney called for a received respect, at least for this call. I don't trust Trump, although I've never voted for Liberals. I will this time, as I believe he's the best to deal with Trump. We will have to leave it there for today, Max, but as always, I suspect we will be chatting with you very soon.
Thanks. I look forward to that.
All right. Take care and have a great weekend. That was Max Cameron, a political science at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at UBC. It is 12:27, and this is BC Today. And of course, the Junos this weekend are here, and they will not only recognize the best of Canadian music, but also achievements in activism. Singer-songwriter Sarah Harmer will accept the Junos Humanitarian Award for her environmental work. She's being recognized for her contributions in protecting conservation land in Ontario from a quarry expansion. She joined Stephen Quinn on the early edition this morning.
It was 20 years ago, and it was 2004, and they were in this middle of, this quarry expansion project. You were in the middle of your musical career. You combined them on the album that came up a year later with Escarpment Blues. And tell me, and that took on a whole life of its own.
We did a walking tour. We drove some of it as well, but we did a hiking tour of the Bruce Trail, which is, I think, Canada's oldest footpath. Yeah. And so my band and I did an acoustic tour. We played community halls and churches along the way. And yeah, they kind of dovetailed the music and the nature activism, and again, it was nice to just be on the ground, step by step.
And that was musician Sarah Harmer, who has had a remarkable career in music. She was part of the 90s band Weeping Tile and ramped up accomplishments as a solo artist as well. And you can catch the 2025 Juno Awards in Vancouver this Sunday, March 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. It is live on CBC TV, CBC Gem, CBC Radio 1, CBC Music, and CBC Music's YouTube page. I'm Amy Bell, sitting in this week for Michelle Elliott here on BC Today. Michelle will be back with you next week. Right now, it is time for the CBC News to 12:30 with Stephanie Mercier.
Good afternoon. In the news, BC Premier David Eby has walked back a key portion of the NDP's tariff response bill, following a backlash over concerns it would give the government the power to bypass the legislature. At a news conference this morning in Vancouver, Eby admitted he didn't get the balance right. The about-face follows negotiations this week between the Attorney General and the two BC Green MLAs over changes to the bill introduced March 13th. As you've been hearing on BC Today, Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump spoke by phone this morning, Trump calling it, quote, an extremely productive call. Carney's office saying the two leaders had a very constructive conversation, adding Carney told Trump Canada will proceed with retaliatory tariffs after the U.S. finalizes its own trade measures on April 2nd. And on the campaign trail, federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is on a swing through BC, talking jobs and taking a tough-on-crime stance. Poilievre says a Conservative government would put the worst criminals in prison for life. That would include human and drug traffickers and gun smugglers. And that's a look at the CBC News from Vancouver. Looking now at the BC weather. Along the north coast, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 13. For the Peace, mainly cloudy with a chance of flurries, then clearing and a high of -9. For the central interior, mainly cloudy, up to +3. For the southeast, showers, highs from 9 to 11. For the southern interior, also showers, a high of +11. And along the south coast, showers today, a high of 11. Rain beginning overnight with a low of 7 degrees. Now back to Amy Bell and BC Today.
Thank you, Stephanie. And if you're in Metro Vancouver, On the Coast has a very special broadcast for you this afternoon to mark the Junos happening this weekend. You can jam out on the airwaves or in person. And if you are in town, you should head down to Robson Square at the Vancouver Art Gallery to see it live. Here's Gloria Makarenko to tell us more.
Amy, hi there. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I hope you can join us this afternoon for On the Coast because it is going to be a special show. We are live at the Vancouver Art Gallery for the Junos. So Jason D'Souza is coming over from Victoria to co-host with me. Rohith Joseph is going to be on site with us throughout the afternoon. Steve Jung is going to be bringing you live traffic updates from the site as well. And we've got a great lineup for you. We're going to hear from Juno nominees, from musical performers, all manner of special guests throughout the afternoon. So come drop by between 3 and 6 at Robson Square at the Vancouver Art Gallery, or at least tune in to On the Coast. Talk to you.
Thank you, Gloria. Really revving up the Junos excitement. Sounds like an amazing show. And of course, you can hear On the Coast on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver and anywhere on the CBC News app. And Brian Minter is here with his gardening advice and to take your questions. He's joining us from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. So call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Hello, Brian. How are you?
Oh, great, Amy. Wonderful to talk to you. And just something that's very important that we have the Junos taking place in Vancouver. But there's another thing that's taking place in Vancouver, and it started basically on March 26th and is going to go to April 28th. And that is the now world famous Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yes.
And just making folks aware of this iconic display of trees and the blossoms that are becoming so important around the world. But Amy, it's really started started back in the 1930s, I guess. And the mayors of Kobe and Yokohama in Japan, to honor the many Japanese Canadians who served in World War I, they donated many, many trees, hundreds of flowering cherry trees to Canada, to British Columbia, when they were planted all through Stanley Park, and those are still there today. And in 1958, the Japanese consul, Mineo Tanabe, donated 300 more cherry trees as an eternal memorial and good friendship between Canada and Japan. This is kind of where all these trees started coming from, which is really quite important. And over time, we're getting thousands of these beautiful trees. But Linda Poole in particular, who actually started the thinking, we have to, celebrate this wonderful thing. So in 2006, what began as a wonderful an awareness of the many thousands of flowering cherry trees taking place in Vancouver. And so this year is the 19th year of this iconic festival, which is really pretty amazing. And essentially, now headquarters is in Van Dusen Gardens, where everything takes place. But it's really an important issue in terms of not only just the celebration of these beautiful blossoms, it's about the culture. It was founded as a non-profit society and supported by the launch partner, the Vancouver Board of Trade, as a Spirit of Vancouver initiative. And the first festival, again in 2006, we finally received its charitable status. The objectives of the whole, basically, display include public education, citywide viewing, musical programs, and fine art displays as well. So it's become more.
Oh, we just cut out on you there, Brian.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're back with us.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes
so
technology.
I wanted to make folks aware of the importance of this taking place. So it's on for some time right now. And just to go out, and Dr. David Lamb, who I knew reasonably well, his thought was when you stand under a cherry blossom tree with a stranger, you become friends. That was, I think, a very iconic thing that Dr. Lamb always mentioned about. But he wanted to make people aware of that. And Amy, at the same time, because looking at the weather going forward right now, it's been wet and so on.
That it has been.
Okay, but the temperatures are actually pretty good. I see some high temperatures coming up this week, but it is the beginning of a time to begin planting many of our vegetables in our garden. We're all looking forward to having those fresh greens and so on. Early peas can go in. People are really anxious to get potatoes in right now. And onions in particular are becoming very, very important. And I just wanted everyone to know that certainly in the lower mainland, where we're getting nighttime temperatures that are not freezing, but daytime temperatures in the 10, 11, 12 degrees, it is a perfect time to begin those vegetable gardens. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that, and the fact that over these next few weeks, celebrate the wonderful cherries we have in Vancouver.
Absolutely. And actually, we'll take our first call because it has a little bit to do with vegetable gardening, or maybe it's fruit gardening. But anyways, Marianne in Vancouver has a question for you, Brian.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I am just thinking about my tomatoes. I know it's early, but just getting the soil ready. And I put leaves on last fall, and I have some good mushroom manure. But I have heard somewhere that you're not supposed to dig up the soil. Is that right? Like, I don't know what to do with the leaves now and the manure, because normally I would just dig it into the ground, into the soil. But is that...
Yeah, Marianne, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's whole issue now in looking at our soils and so on. And just so you know, in particularly in North America, almost 50% of our soils are gone. And we're looking at the process of regenerative gardening today, where in fact you never leave your soil bare. Thank you for putting the leaves on, Marianne. That was very smart of you. But you work in organic matter, and where you don't have to dig everything up with a shovel, your soil should be open and rich and loose, so you can just basically, with very small utensils, open it up and begin planting. That's the idea, keeping always the crop cover on top, and basically not having to dig up everything, where it does destroy a lot of organisms in the soil. And that's really what that's all about. But in a small space garden, do whatever you're doing, whatever you've done to have success in the past, just keep it up. But that's what that's all about, as a process of regenerative gardening, Marianne.
But then what would you do with all the leaves? Just leave them there? Just leave them on the top?
No, I wouldn't. Honestly, I would if you've got a little corner in your garden somewhere where you can put a little compost together. It doesn't have to be with a special bin. Just put a layer of leaves and a layer of soil, and let the bacteria start breaking it down naturally. Those leaves will be far more valuable that way.
So take it off my soil.
I would now at this point. Yep. There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
And you
Put the
and
manure
work it
on
in
top
too.
and dig it in. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Oh, he's frozen again there, but that is exactly what he was saying, Marianne. So I do thank you for
Great,
calling
thank
in.
you.
And we'll get another call in now from Leah in Cranbrook about her fig tree, I believe. Hi, Leah.
Hi there.
And what is your question for Brian?
I have a fig tree. It's quite pathetic looking. I've had it for at least 5 years now, and I hacked it back, cut it back probably in half to try and encourage it to branch, which after a lot of waiting, it did. It's about 1.5 to 2 feet tall, and it's putting out new leaves like crazy. It's constantly putting out really nice new leaves, but then they die off and drop off. So I'm being intentional to make sure I'm trying to let it dry out between waterings. It's not sitting in water. I don't know, if I try transplanting it into a bigger pot. I don't know. I'm trying to get it to thrive, and it's just failing.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge in Cranbrook because virtually all our figs are zone 7, and you're zone 4 or 5, depending on where Cranbrook is. So you're treating it as an indoor plant. But yeah, they do like a little bit of room. I wouldn't mind see you putting it in a bigger pot. But this is very important. When you take it out of the pot, look at the roots, and they should be nice white roots growing beautifully and so on. And you don't have regular potting soil. You need a very coarse, open, porous type of soil for figs to thrive and do well. So take it out of the pot, look at the roots, see how they're doing. Get some soil. It's a little more coarse, more like a tree soil or perennial soil. It'd be happy. And basically, I would pot it up now into a bigger pot, put it in a bright window. And the secret is figs are very resilient. I mean, they take a lot of drought and so on. So overwatering is the biggest challenge. Give them a good drink, let them dry out, put them right in a window where they get all the light possible. And basically, that's all you need to worry about. And then as soon as you can get them outside, it's probably going to be the latter part of May, then pop them outdoors, and they'll do so much better out there for the rest of the summer.
All right, Leah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in, Leah. And we'll read an email right now from Lana. She writes to you, Brian, why do most of the tulip bulbs I've planted over the years only produce single huge leaves and no flowers? I've tried fertilizing, but could use some advice on how and when.
Lana, an incredibly important question, and a lot of folks are finding the same situation. They need to be fed. And the only time you can feed a tulip is when leaves come out of the ground. They've been doing that for some time right now, depending on the early, mid, or late varieties. But as soon as they're out of the ground, you should get some nutrient around them. Feed them, because it's not this year.
Oh, and we're still having a bit of trouble with Brian's connection. Oh, you're back with us, Brian. Sorry for the line.
Okay, sorry. Feed them well. A well-balanced fertilizer is all you really need. And again, let the leaves come up, grow, whether they flower or not. Those leaves are building up the flower in next year's bulb. And that's really the secret. So feeding the tulips as soon as they're out of the ground, best thing you can do, not for this year, because it's already predetermined whether they're going to flower or not, but it's for next year.
All right. And Lana, I hope that does help you. And Jim writes, I have a clematis which grows on the breeze back cement walls, which form my carport. I'd like to move it, and I'm wondering about the timing for this and the conditions necessary for it to thrive.
Yeah, good point. And just remember, for most part, we're getting very intensely warm summertime. Clematis love the morning sun, but they're not so happy with the afternoon sun. So finding a location that gets lots of morning sun, bit of the afternoon sun, but none of the intense. I would cut it back now, probably 2.5 to 3 feet, and because now they're just beginning to show signs of life, and very carefully dig a good root system and move it to a new location. If you can do it this weekend, it's a great time because things are now becoming active, and you'll find that it'll, within 2 or 3 weeks, be settled in nicely, and then you'll see the new growth starting to come. So as soon as we can cut it back, get it transplanted, that would be the best.
All right. Good luck with that, clematis. We're going to call in now from Shauna in Surrey. Hi, Shauna. What's your question for Brian Minter?
Oh, hi, you guys.
Hi.
We have a japonica. It's in a pot, and we got it last year. It was about 1 foot high, and we had it outside under cover, and it was doing beautifully until late January, early February, and then all the branches just dropped down. It was sort of in a position, so it was still getting precipitation, but I think when it got really cold, it wasn't happy. And it probably speaks to it being in a pot. Any recommendations? It's looking very sad as we speak.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Now, by the way, japonica means from Japan, which includes millions of plants, by the way. So we're not quite sure what it is. Probably a purist japonica, the lily of the valley shrub might be the one. They are reasonably hardy, but the soil, as we talked.
Leaves.
Yes.
Yeah, big, huge leaves that look like maple leaves.
Yeah, but well, it could.
Oh no.
Oh, we
open and porous, and that makes all the difference in the world. So I would take it out, look at the roots, and get a better, more well-drained soil, and just put it in a comfortable pot. Don't put it in too big a pot to see if we can get it growing again. That's really going to be the key.
All right, Shauna, does that help you out?
Well, I missed a significant part of what Brian said. But, what I did here was to remove it from the pot, repot it in perhaps maybe a smaller pot, see what the roots look like, and cross our fingers.
Perfect. No, no crossing fingers. I'm sorry. We want to add, you need a very coarse, you need a perennial soil or tree soil that's more open and porous. That will draw your new roots out on this particular plant. So that's really the secret, is get not potting soil, but a really coarse, well-drained soil, and that will make all the difference for you.
Wonderful. Okay, Shauna, you're an incredible student. Good luck with your tree there. We'll take a call now from Frank in Nanaimo. Hi, Frank.
Hello there.
And what is your question for Brian while we have him here today?
I have 4 Leylandii cypress planted in a hedge. They're about 8 feet tall and it's about 3 feet wide. But inside it's all dying, but on the outside it's starting to turn brown also, and looks like it's starting to die off.
Yeah, well, Frank, you're in the perfect spot for Leylandii. It is the fastest growing conifer in the world. It is absolutely the number one fast one. Trouble is, when we get it.
Hopefully we can get Brian back.
Does it grow? Okay, sorry. It may be just a little bit of burnt with the cold spell we had on the foliage, and I would just prune it back, Frank. I would prune them back, just shake out the center a wee bit, and they'll come back fine. So it's just a bit of winter burn. I think that's the only thing that is the problem with it. They grow so quickly and so beautifully that actually 3 or 4 weeks of nice growing weather, they should be back in shape for you, Frank.
Should I prune out the dead stuff inside the hedge?
Mm-hmm. If you prune it, prune the outside, it'll get more air and sunlight. That'll fall off and it'll be gone. But really, they grow so fast and so quickly that once the growing season starts, it'll be nothing but that beautiful blue-green.
And what about fertilizer for those guys?
Yeah, good point. I would put a timed release evergreen fertilizer on. Something that the nursery industry uses is slow release, and there's many different ones in the market. Even it's something like a 14-14-14 that's going to feed over a longer period of time just with one application. That's what I would use. And right now, I would do it on as soon as possible.
Hope that,
Thanks very much.
I hope that
Thank
helps you out, Frank. And we do have, of course, emails coming in. But if you do want to ask a question of Brian Minter about your gardening, get them in now. You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and email us bctoday@cbc.ca. We do have an email, in fact, that's come in from Jane. And Brian, she says, I didn't get my garlic planted last fall. Can I plant it now?
Yes, you can. Many bulb companies are putting garlic on the shelf right now. It's going to be a longer harvest. Normally about September we harvest garlic, so it may be October before you harvest, but get them in as soon as you possibly can. And many garden stores now have potted garlic, which is already growing and doing well. That too would speed things up. But yeah, go plant that garlic. I mean, where would our gardens be without it? So, absolutely. Yeah.
Go crazy.
Yeah.
Get that garlic in
Go
the
crazy.
ground.
Yeah. Yes, today.
Now, chop. We have a call coming in from Alex in Half Moon Bay. Hi, Alex. Thanks for joining BC Today.
Oh, thank you. Nice to talk with you. Long-time listener, first call.
Oh, wow.
Oh, thank you.
What is your question for Brian?
I do indeed. Brian, I got a lilac that I actually took a cutting from a neighbor's lilac more than 10 years ago. It's now at least 8 feet tall. And
Good.
It has never bloomed, and I haven't got a clue what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, well, you're doing a lot of things right because the lilac is growing. But I'm going to ask the $64 question here. What are you feeding it?
I feed a lot of things, but that one I'm not actually feeding.
Oh, okay. I think we put our finger in the problem. And this is, Alex, this is really
You
important.
got a hungry lilac, Alex.
That's right.
Yeah, I must.
The 3 things you must do. Number 1, get a nutrient that's high in phosphorus and potash and low in nitrogen. And I'd recommend a 10, 15, 19 fertilizer now, and do it again in midsummer because that will help develop buds. The second thing is in the summertime, when it actually is growing and doing well, stop watering it. Put the plant under stress, shock the plant, get it under water stress. And Alex, you'd be amazed how that will completely turn things around. So basically no nitrogen, lots of phosphorus and potash now, twice this particular now and again midsummer. And the shocking of cutting off the water when it needs it most, not to the point of wilting, but that little bit of shock. And if you do that,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I got all of that, and he seems to be gone again. So
we keep having troubles with the line.
I don't think I've ever watered it, but I'll make sure I don't for now. 10, 15,
Thank you.
19. So,
absolutely. Yep.
All right. Thank you for that. And we have a call in from Rob in Chemainus. Hi, Rob. What were you curious about for your garden today?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. And I now know what to do with my lilacs.
Hey, there you go. We all do.
My question is to do with the Leyland cedar hedge that I have out front, and the first one in the line is probably about 2 and 3 feet from the base to the driveway. It is starting to shoot up the driveway, or the root system is growing underneath there. I'm wondering if I can dig up next to the driveway, cut it off, dig out, try and pull the root system out that's going that way. Will that affect the tree itself? Do you know?
Rob, brilliant. That's exactly what you need to do. It's called root pruning. And if you do it now, before we get into the heat stress of the summertime, and like many trees, they get in a situation where they've just grown too big. So dig a trench right around the area that you want to protect for the roots going under the driveway. Dig that trench. And I would go down, honestly, about 2.5, 3 feet, get a real good barrier. And if you're worried about it in the future, just drop some plastic in there. So the plastic will stop the roots from getting further. But that'll save your driveway, and if you do it now, it'll save your tree as well with no problems at all. So you knew what you were going to do. That was great idea, Rob.
Trust your instincts.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks for calling in, Rob. We'll head to Victor now in Merville. You've got a question about your horseradish, I believe.
Yeah, I need some help because I've heard that horseradish can grow anywhere, and well, I've had it in the ground 2 years now, but my roots, they're not those great big fat horseradish roots that I look for. And a neighbor who's an avid gardener, she said to me, "Good God, Vic, if you can't grow horseradish, maybe you should reconsider gardening."
No gardening shaming around here. Come on now.
Yeah, that's right.
But I just don't know what am I doing wrong.
Okay, is your soil pretty good though? Overall, well drained, pretty good soil.
Yes, it's a good soil. It's there's a name for this type of silt we have on our farm here, but I have mixed it with some good, well composted soil. Like I say, it's been 2 years.
Yep. Okay, two things here. Number one is let's get some organic matter. Compost is good. I never dispute that, but it doesn't have a lot of nutrient in it. So let's get some something like a sea soil or mushroom compost and work it into the soil. That will get the organic matter up dramatically. And the second thing is I want you to feed it, as we talked earlier.
Brian.
Just cut out.
Brian, you've just cut out there. Maybe we could get you to repeat so that we can get Victor's horseradish going off to the races.
Absolutely, and that's really important. Okay, so seriously, 10, 15, 19 fertilizer. It's produced in British Columbia. Put that on now, as well as some sea soil or mushroom compost. Work that in. And if you do that, I really, within about 3 or 4 months, you should have complete turnaround. Your horseradish should be spreading all over the world and becoming invasive. So, okay, Frank.
Well, no, it's in a well protected spot, so let it spread. But what was was the numbers on that fertilizer again?
10, 15, 19. It's called flower 10, and 15. Veg food. 19. Yep. And it's 10, got 15, all the 19. Micronutrients.
Super. Thank you so much, Brian.
All right, thank you so much for that, Victor. And if we get taken over by horseradish, we know where it's come from. We just have about 1 minute left, so we'll get a quick question in from Rayanne and Victoria. Hi, what's your quick question for Brian?
Hi, Brian. I have a 20-year-old Montana clematis. I have 3 1-inch stems that kind of come up and they intertwine in a way too short support. Can I cut the clematis right down, like take it right down so that it can restart and I can put a better support in?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to do that. The timing is everything. Because the Montanas bloom in June, I kind of like to leave it alone and let it bloom and give it some performance. But anytime you want to prune it back, either in June or right now, sometimes I agree. We just have to prune them back, let them restart, be nice and full again from the bottom. And so whether you do it now or whether you do it in June, it's something that really have to do this year. Absolutely.
Hope that helps you. And Brian, quickly before I let you go, I just want to ask you if there's one thing that a gardener could do this weekend, what would you like to see them do?
Start the vegetable garden.
Okay.
So many of us would like to go out and start picking fresh lettuce or Swiss chard or spinach or watch those potatoes begin to grow. But this is the beginning of a time to grow our food garden. Okay. And it's a perfect time to be able to do that right now. That's my one thing.
All right, Brian, you've motivated me. Might actually get my my vegetables growing this year. Brian, thank you so much. Brian Minter, of course, is our gardening columnist and joined us from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack, and he will be back with us in 2 weeks. And that is just about all the time we have for our show today. Keep in mind, we have all of the Juno festivities coming up this weekend that, of course, you can access, so enjoy that.